one now.
Yeah,
A few more you do?
I think so.
One thing. I didn't see the couple sign. Inshallah. But that kind of one. Yeah, that'd be good. You sharp. Yeah. Inshallah. Hmm? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا اللهم زدنا علما إنك أنت عليم الحكيم اللهم اجعل هذه المحاضرة حجة لنا لا حجة علينا يا رب العالمين أما بعد. This is our third class in Divine Law, which the class is predicated on understanding Islam or Islamic Sharia as it passes through the years or through the times, from the time of the Prophet ﷺ up until the time that we live in today. During the time, last week, or the last time we had a class, someone asked a question regarding crimes and punishments in Islam. And so we spoke about it briefly, but we're just going to touch on that in some detail, but not a lot of detail. So in Islam, in terms of crimes and punishments, and there are three types. We have something called a ta'zir, and we're going to explain each one. We have something called a ta'zir, and we have something called al-hudud, and we have something called al-qisas. And we're going to talk about them briefly, inshallah ta'ala, before we get into the topic here. Al-ta'zir in the Sharia هو عقوبة غير مقدرة شرعا, which means هو عقوبة غير مقدرة شرعا. Right? And what that means is that there is a punishment that has not been legislated, or rather the punishment has been legislated, but the specific penalty has not been made clear by way of the Sharia. So for an example, it says هو عقوبة غير مقدرة مشروعة في كل معصية لا حد فيها ولا قصاص ولا كفارة إلى هذا التعريف ذهب جمهور الفقهاء. So let's say, for example, if you catch a person not stealing, but let's say, for example, a person lied, right? The person is a proven liar. Right? Now this is the judicial system in Islam. So you look through the laws of Islam, there's no had, and we'll talk about that later, there's no had and there's no qisas. So then there's no specific punishment that has been specifically laid out for the one who told a lie. There's no qisas, and we'll talk about that. So therefore, if there's no had in qisas, then there has to be something called a ta'zir. A ta'zir, for example, it could be imprisonment for 30 days. There's no specific legislative punishment for that. It could be whatever the case may be, but there's no specific punishment associated with it. However, many of the fuqaha, or the scholars of Islam, they say as long as it does not exceed qisas or had, as long as it doesn't reach those levels, then it can be anything, anything that is underneath that. Like a had, the term had in the Sharia is a punishment, عقوبة مقدرة تجب حقا لله تعالى. The had is a punishment that is legislated because someone transgressed the rights of Allah. Is that clear? When someone transgresses the rights of Allah, then there is a punishment associated with it that cannot be removed. So for example, it says هو عقوبة لما يوقع على الإنسان من جزاء في الدنيا نتيجة مخالفته ومخالفته للشرع وارتكاب ما نهى عنه. For example, the person may have done something, the person may have done something that is impermissible, right? In forms of transgressing the bounds of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب مقدرة أي أن لها قدرا خاصا مبينا في كتاب الله وسنة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. However, the punishment for that particular thing has been specifically clarified what that punishment will be. So we'll give some examples. For example, the crime of that is deserving of the head, they mentioned a few of them. From them is sariqah, stealing. There's a specific punishment about that. Like, another one is qat al-tariq. Let's say, for example, if a person is a highway robber, they block the pathway of righteousness, they oppress and harm the people with no just cause. There's a head for that. There's a specific punishment for that. Likewise, head is zina. If a person fornicates, then there's a specific punishment for that. Likewise, the qadhf. A qadhf is when you accuse a righteous person of committing zina. And likewise, a head for shurb al-khamr. If a person drinks alcohol, etc., etc. The next one is al-qisas. Al-qisas, or qisas, it's a punishment muqaddara shar'an haqqan lil-fard. This is a punishment that has been legislated, but it's the right of the individual to take that punishment or not. What does that mean? Meaning, it doesn't mean you take it into your own hands, but you have the ability to prevent the punishment from happening, or you can allow the punishment to happen. So for an example, let's say for example, هو يشترك مع حدود في كونه عقوبة مقدرة. It's similar to the head because there are specific punishments for it. However, with qisas, alright, go ahead. Huh? As I was saying, the qisas has to do with the rights of an individual. So let's say, for example, if you're fighting a Muslim and you break their arm, right? This is from qisas. Either you can A, pardon that person, or that person can pay something called adiyah and anything like that. Does that make sense? Even with murder, for example, if a person murders another Muslim, right? This is called qisas. Qisas now is you follow the laws as is, then maybe they will execute that person. However, if the person says, no, I would rather take the money, the blood money, then they will take the money, or they can pardon. Or they can what? Pardon. So, the difference between head and qisas. A head, there's no pardoning. If you drink alcohol, there's no pardoning for that. Is that clear? The punishment is clear, but there's no pardoning. So, a person may say, okay, I know a person that stole. As long as it doesn't reach the Islamic court government level, then you can pardon from among yourselves as you see fit. But once it reaches the judicial system in Islam, then the judge does not have the authority to take it back and say, okay, I'm going to let you slide. Does that make sense? So in that sense, with regards to the hudud, there's no room for leverage. There's no negotiating. As it relates to qisas, then there is room for negotiating. Is that clear? Now, okay. There's a qisas, there's a punishment for that. And if someone hit you, let's say they punch you, they harm you, they injure you, you can go in front of an Islamic court and you can seek money from that for your injuries, and et cetera, et cetera. These things are known in the Sharia, right? There's a right. For example, if a person knocks a tooth out your mouth, each tooth has a value. Each finger has a value. An arm has a value, right? You break someone's nose, there's a value for that, right? Every body part from a human being, there's a monetary value associated with it in Islam. Is that clear? Like, that was it. I just wanted to briefly go over that really quick just to understand the difference between ta'zir Ta'zir means that there's no specific punishment for it. The judge has the ability to choose whatever he wants as long as it doesn't reach the level of whatever the punishment is for had and whatever the punishment is for qisas. A had is a specific punishment in the Sharia that you cannot pardon. There's no pardoning for a had. Qisas, there is also a specific punishment, but there is a pardoning from the person to that individual. For example, if you kill someone, the family could pardon you, or you can pay money and the family pardons you, etc. There's some negotiation as it relates to that. Is that clear? No.
You said as far as someone who kills someone, the family of the victim can do the qisas.
No, the family of the victim does not do the qisas. Yeah, let's understand this. Islam is not a vigilante type religion. There are laws in place. Just like here, if a person commits a crime, they have to go in front of a judge, etc. The same thing in Islam. Even if you kill someone, there's no street retribution. You must go in front of the court, you must go in front of the judge, and the judge will rule in the case accordingly. Okay? There's no you killed a family member of mine, I'm going to kill you. It doesn't work like that.
No, that's not what I was asking.
Oh, what do you ask?
You were saying that if a person kills someone, that as far as qisas, that the person that can be pardoned. My question, you said that
The pardoning person, okay, so the family of the deceased or the victim, they have the ability to pardon.
Yeah, my question is that depending on what type of killing it is, like if it's an accidental?
So you have different types of killings. You have a qatl an, shibh an, wa qatl khata. At any event, more than likely, and Allah knows best, from what I recollect, that family member still has the ability to pardon. They have the ability to pardon. This is why it's from qisas. Someone transgressed and took your rights, now you have the right to either pardon or not pardon. Well then, inshallah ta'ala, maybe one day we can go into great detail with it, just like of the whole crimes and punishments in Islam, but I just wanted to talk on that because a few weeks ago a brother asked about it. I'm not sure if my answer was clear as it related to that, and Allah knows best. Like, today, inshallah, we're going to continue with the time period of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. This time period is called the Asr al-Tashri', the time period where the legislation was initiated, meaning Islamic legislation was initiated. When can we say that the tariq or the history of Islamic law started? When can we say it started? From when? What time period? After they migrated to Medina? La.
When the revelation first came.
When the revelation first came. So when the revelation first came, the Prophet ﷺ, he spent how many years in Mecca before he went to Medina? How many years? 13 years. 13 years of da'wah, 13 years of what? What was the primary call during the time in Mecca? What was the primary call?
Singling out Allah and worship.
Singling out Allah and worship, right? Iman and kufr, basic Islamic belief for 13 years. Once they went to Al-Medina, what was the call then? Was it the same? Did it change?
Well, that call was still the same, but it became, as far as legislation, it became a distinction between us and people who came before us.
Good. So there was a distinction, meaning it was an increase, right? So certain aspects of the religion was revealed in Medina that were not revealed in the time of Mecca. Many of those things were considered ahkam al-mu'amalat. Ahkam al-mu'amalat are actions or rulings as it relates to dealing with people, business transactions, etc., etc. Also, we have something as well, we spoke about a tadrij, a tadarruj, right? When issues came down, and for example, alcohol. Alcohol is what in Islam? Is it halal for a Muslim to drink? No. In fact, there's a punishment associated with drinking alcohol. It's called Hadd Shurb al-Khamr. There's a specific punishment allocated for the Muslim who drinks. Obviously, it's not for us. It's not for us to punish Muslims for drinking alcohol or doing any of this. It's not. We don't have jurisdiction, and this is not what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala commanded from us. However, this is the command for the people that are in authority, leaders, government rulers, etc., in the land of the Muslims. طيب. Next issue. Have anyone ever heard the term ijtihad? Ijtihad. Does anyone know what that means? What's ijtihad? Explain to me what ijtihad is. To give an independent ruling? To give a ruling or to give a fatwa? So ijtihad is different than fatwa. What does ijtihad mean? The word, what does it mean? Hold on.
Yeah, I remember the lecture you read last year, we were saying that it's when an Islamic scholar who has the ability to make ijtihad.
You can't, so here's the thing, you can't use the definition of a word in the you can't explain a word with the definition, with the word. So for example, I ask you what ijtihad is, you can't use ijtihad in the definition. We're trying to figure out what ijtihad means. What does it mean?
Accurate between what you do know and you don't have a definitive answer clear about to answer a particular question. To use whatever knowledge you do have from whatever sources are available to come to a conclusion.
Ahsant. So in general, الاجتهاد هو الاستفراغ الوسع في التحصيل العلم أو ظن بالحكم. The word ijtihad, it means talab al-juhd, meaning you will exercise whatever mental capacity or capability you have at arriving at the ruling. That's not what you said. Ijtihad is to exert all effort, full extent of your ability to arrive at a ruling. That's what you said?
He said, I get what you said, you could kind of get halfway through it and be like, oh, all right, I got the answer and stop. He's saying you gotta go.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's,
full fledged. Like,
we need a full fledged.
That's the difference. It's just going farther.
So in essence, ijtihad is when a person exerts all effort to arrive at a ruling. So they don't half-step. They don't look at, okay, is this? No, they exercise all possible means of gaining that particular, or understanding that particular issue. So here's a question. هل وقع اجتهاد من النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام? And did the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام make ijtihad? وهل وقع اجتهاد من صحابته? And did his companions make ijtihad? We're talking about during his time, not after he passed, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Did the Prophet, first we're going to talk about the Prophet alayhi salatu wa sallam. Did the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, did he make ijtihad? And what does ijtihad mean again? Exert all effort to arrive at a ruling that they may not have been definitively sure about. Did the Prophet ﷺ give any verdicts that he was not definitively sure about? No.
He made ijtihad.
The reason I'm saying
If you say no, that means he didn't make ijtihad.
Oh, no.
And if you say yes, then he made ijtihad.
from Surah Al-Najm, I don't think he made ijtihad.
From Surah Al-Najm, he did not make ijtihad.
Because
لا ينطق عن الهوى إن هو إلا وحي يوحى. Right? So based on that ayah, you say that there's no ijtihad. So
from the Prophet ﷺ.
that's what we're talking about. From the Prophet ﷺ. So use this ayah. Strong deliver. Right? However, there's some khilaf.
I might be wrong.
No. That's an excellent response, right? So we're going to learn today, inshallah ta'ala, did the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, make ijtihad? Now,
So, but he is the deliverer.
he himself is the deliverer.
So
So what about when situations happened? Were there situations that happened when he was uncertain on a ruling and gave a ruling on it? You say no. One time. Anyone agree with him? Huh? You agree? I said. Anyone else? We're talking about the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. The question again, did the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, did he perform any type of ijtihad? You say no. Like, everyone agrees with that, right? Huh?
I think people are a little nervous.
Yeah, they're scared.
No, I ain't sure. It's just, I'm lost.
Pay attention. When the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam passed, that's when all the legislation was clear. There's nothing that came after that. So right now we're talking about during his time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, did he make ijtihad? You say no. Cool, let's go with that. Al-Jawab. The answer is that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam did do acts of ijtihad during his lifetime. بعده أقره الشارع وبعده أنكره الشارع. Some of the ijtihadat that the Prophet ﷺ, either it went in accordance with the Sharia, and the Sharia meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the legislation of Islam affirmed it, and then there were cases where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala corrected them and didn't affirm it. Yes, this is what the ulama explaining. Is that clear? Mind you, this only happened during the time of Tashri'. It happened during a time where the legislations were mentioned. We're going to mention some examples. All right? The first one. فَمِنَ الْإِجْتِهَادَاتِ الَّتِي أَقَرَّهَا الشَّارِعُ. So from the ijtihad that the Prophet ﷺ did, that was in agreement with the Sharia, that agreed with him when he did what he did, اجتهاده في ترك بناء الكعبة على قواعد إبراهيم. During the time of the Kuffar Quraysh, the Kaaba was knocked down. Are you guys familiar with this? Okay. The Kaaba was rebuilt again. But it was rebuilt the way it's built today. And the way it's built today is in error. Is in what? Error. Meaning, the Kaaba, if anyone has made tawaf around the Kaaba, you'll find that it's a box. But then there's a portion around it that's a circle. Right? It's like a semicircle. That semicircle somehow is also part of the Kaaba, but it's not built out the way it should be. Why wasn't it built out that way? So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِبْقَاؤُهَا عَلَى بَنَا قُرَيْشٍ. The Prophet ﷺ, he elected to leave the Kaaba the way that it was. He didn't fix it. So to this day, the Kaaba is still not the way it's supposed to be. Why did he leave it that way? It says, مُعَلَّلًا ذلك بقول لأم المؤمنين عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها لولا حدث قومك بالكفر لفعلت. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, if your people weren't new to Islam, I would have fixed it the way it was supposed to be fixed. The reason why he didn't fix it because he was afraid that it would cause fitna. So the Prophet ﷺ left the Kaaba the way that it is. And this is what we have to this day. That was his ijtihad. That was considered as ijtihad. Another one, اجتهاده في ترك الأمر بالسواك خشية المشقة على أمته في حديث لولا أن أشق على المؤمنين في حديث زهير على أمتي لأمرتهم بالسواك عند كل صلاة. النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, لولا أشق على أمتي. If I was not afraid for my ummah, I would have made it obligatory to make siwak with every salah. Use the miswak for every single salah. This is also considered from his ijtihad. He said if I didn't fear for the Muslims, then I would have commanded them to make use the miswak in every salah. And then we're going to mention in one instance, in an instance here where two instances. One instance, two instances where the Prophet ﷺ made an ijtihad and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala corrected him in it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes.
So those are the ijtihads where he was correct.
Where he was correct. Where it affirmed or agreed with the Sharia. Right? And then the second one is these two, these are times where it didn't, where Allah corrected him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala corrected him. And this is important to know as it relates to how legislation starts. It says, وَمِمَّا أَنْكَرُوا الشَّارِعِ اجْتِهَادُهُ فِي أَخْذِ الفِّدَى مِنْ أَسْرَى بَدْرٍ. So there was an ijtihad where the Prophet ﷺ, he wanted to take the money or take the ransom from the prisoners of the Battle of Badr. Right? The issue of taking the ransom from them or freeing them, letting the people go, the prisoners go from the Battle of Badr. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to him, مَا كَانَ لِنَبِيٍّ أَن يَكُونَ لَهُ أَسْرَى حَتَّى يُثْخِنَ فِي الْأَرْضِ تُرِيدُونَ عَرَضَ الدُّنْيَا وَاللَّهُ يُرِيدُ الْآخِرَةَ. In this ayah, it says that it is not for the prophet, any prophet, to take for them ransoms until they are finished, until the enemies no longer exist. So here in this case, this shows that the Prophet he gave an ijtihad here, but it opposed what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted at that time. Another case would be وَمِثْلَهُ اجْتِهَادُ فِي إِذْنِ لِمُتَخَلِّفِ تَبُوكَ حَتَّى نَزَلَ عَلَيْهِ قَوْلُ الْحَقِّ مُعَاتِبًا. Another situation was when the Prophet ﷺ, he allowed for some of the companions to not partake in the Battle of Tabuk. He allowed them to not partake in the Battle of Tabuk, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to him, عَفَى اللَّهُ عَنْكَ. May Allah will pardon you. لِمَا أَذِنَتْ لَهُمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكَ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَتَعْلَمُوا الْكَاذِبِينَ. So he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Prophet ﷺ, you let them fall away from war when you didn't know whether they were liars or truthful in what they said. So here he corrected the Prophet ﷺ in this case. So these two are instances where the Prophet ﷺ gave an ijtihad, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala corrected him in it. And then the other two were examples of which the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave ijtihad and it was accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amma sahabatu Rasul, as it relates to the Messenger, as it relates to the companions of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, then obviously فَقَدْ وَقَعَ مِنْهُمْ اجْتِهَادٌ فِي حَيَاتِهِ وَبَعْدَ وَفَاتِهِ. That the companions, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, they made ijtihad in the life of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam while he was living, and also obviously after the death of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Do we have any examples of the companions making ijtihad in the life of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam? Nah. You mentioned one earlier. When they said do not pray until you reach Beni Qurayza, right? So he mentioned the one where the Prophet ﷺ, he told the companions, don't pray Asr until you reach the destination. And so some of the companions, they stopped in the path and they prayed. And other companions, they said no. He said don't pray until you reach the end. So they waited, but this may not be, it was ijtihad by the ones who prayed. As for the ones who listened, then it may not be considered ijtihad by them. In any event, this does show, however, this hadith is indicative that the companions had a difference of opinion on their understanding during the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and perhaps that's something we can delve into a little later. الذي يعيدنا هو اجتهاد في زمن بعثته فمن ذلك. So then we're going to mention some of the examples. Yes.
I was going to mention another one of the Sahaba.
Well, I believe
it was Usama bin Zayd. I don't know if it's considered ijtihad or if it's just a mistake, but he was on the battlefield. The man said that the law would kill anyone anyway.
Like that could also be considered ijtihad. And the Prophet ﷺ, he corrected him. And he said that he wished he could not become Muslim until that day. Like, ahsant. But we're going to mention some other examples here. It says, ijtihad Mu'adh bin Jabal. Mu'adh bin Jabal, he had some ijtihad during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, حين بعثه إلى اليمن. When the Prophet ﷺ, he told him to go to Yemen. فقال كيف تصنع إن عرض لك قضاء. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said to Mu'adh, what will you do if a ruling is needed? How will you rule? So Mu'adh, he said, قَالَ أَقْضِي بِمَا فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. He said, I will rule with that which we find in the book of Allah. فَإِنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. So we said to him, well, what if it's not in the book of Allah? Then what? قَالَ فَبِسُنَّةِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Then he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, then he said that I will rule with your sunnah. فَقَالَ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ فِي سُنَّةِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. So what if it's not in the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam? قَالَ أَجْتَهِدُ رَأِي لَا. He said, I will use my opinion in what I say. قال فضرب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم صدري ثم قال الحمد لله الذي وفق رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لما يرضى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So he said, if I can't find it in the Quran, and if I can't find it in the Sunnah, then I'm going to use my opinion. Meaning, I'm going to make ijtihad. I'm going to make ijtihad. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said to him, Alhamdulillah. He said, all praise to Allah, to the one that has been given tawfiq, to the messenger of Allah that has been given tawfiq. Now, tawfiq means success. That has been given success, yes.
So, it was
Ijtihad. Mm-hmm.
Ijtihad, is that just for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
So we're going to, okay.
All right.
So ijtihad, essentially, there are rules for ijtihad, right? In order for a person to give a verdict in Islam, that means you have to be qualified. Qualified to give ijtihad, it necessitates a certain level of knowledge, right? You can't be a day-to-day Muslim who is not grounded, and I'm just being honest, grounded in Islam to be able to make issues of ijtihad. You're not qualified, right? I'll give you an example. If an issue were to come up, let's say stem cell research in Islam, right? This is considered fiqh al-nazila. This is considered min al-nawazil. Nawazil are issues that were not talked about in the past. You have a family, they come to you, the sister's not able to have children. They say, what about the vitro? You guys familiar with vitro? The thing that they use when you can't have children and they put like something,
Vitro fertilization.
what's it called?
In vitro fertilization.
In vitro fertilization, right? What's the ruling on that? That's what I'm saying. What's the ruling? You right here, we're going to ask you, what's the ruling on that, right? You have no tools to be able to get a ruling on it. None. You don't even know where to start, right? These issues are considered nawazil, meaning issues that were not discussed in the past, but scholarly research is needed to be given. Even when it comes to, there's so many issues, especially living here in America. There's so many issues that require scholarly research. You can't just ask haram. It's easy for us in our communities to say something is haram because it doesn't require research to say something is haram. All right, it's easy. Oh, it's haram, not permissible. Cool. But if you don't know, now you are required to do research. And research, once you reach an answer, is going to require you to know what you're talking about. Right? So it's not something that is just black and white, halal, haram, and that's but this issue of fertilization or what have you, right? It takes knowledge, it takes skill, it takes it takes fahm, it takes total understanding and looking at the issue and looking at the potential problems and so on and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I got more questions, but I'm going to let you.
All right, let me finish, inshallah. Right? So, the next issue we want to finish, inshallah. Right. The next issue, كذا اجتهاد عمرو ibn al-As. So Amr ibn al-As from the companions, رضي الله تعالى عنه, حين احتلم في ليلة باردة. So Amr ibn al-As, he had nocturnal emission. You guys familiar with nocturnal emission? You have to explain that? No, I don't. People understand what that means. So, all right. So Amr ibn al-As, tell me what it means out here. Yeah. Amr ibn al-As, Laylatul Barida, there was a cold night, and he had nocturnal emission, right? There was a battle going on, and he had nocturnal emission, or A wet dream, right? So it says, فَأَشْفَقَتْ أَنْ اغْتَسَلَ فَأَهْلَكَ. And he was afraid to make a ghusl because he thought that it was so cold he would be harmed or destroyed or injure himself or get sick. فَتَيَمَّمَتْ. So he made tayammum. ثُمَّ صَلَيْتْ بِأَصْحَابِ صُبْحٍ. And then he prayed Fajr with the rest of the companions. فَذَكَرُوا ذَلِكَ لِلنَّبِيِّ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. So the rest of the companions, they went to the Prophet ﷺ on him. So he prayed with us. He didn't make a ghusl. فَقَالَ يَا عَمَرُ يَا عَمَرُ صَلَيْتَ بِأَصْحَابِكَ وَأَنْتَ جُنُبٌ. So the companions still thought he was in a state of janaba, meaning sexual impurity. And so they told the Prophet ﷺ on him. And so the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went to Amr ibn al-As and said, Ya Amr, you pray Salatul Fajr and you're in a state of junub, meaning you have sexual impurities on you. فَأَخْبَرْتُهُ بِالَّذِي مَنَعَنِي. He says, فَأَخْبَرْتُهُ بِالَّذِي مَنَعَنِي مِنَ الْإِخْتِسَامِ. He says, so I told the Prophet ﷺ that which prevented me from making a ghusl. وَقُلْتُ إِنِّي سَمِعْتُ اللَّهَ يَقُولُ وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِكُمْ رَحِيمًا. Now listen to this. Amr ibn al-As, he told the Prophet ﷺ that it was cold, etc. And then he used dalil. He used dalil to support his position. He used the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah An-Nisa, where Allah says, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Allah says, do not kill yourselves. إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِكُمْ رَحِيمًا. That Allah verily is merciful to you. And based on this ayah was the proof that he used not to make a ghusl because it was cold. Right? So what did the Prophet ﷺ do? فَضَحِكَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ وَلَمْ يَقُلْ شَيْئًا. The Prophet ﷺ, he smiled and he didn't do anything. He didn't say anything after that. Meaning he agreed with this ijtihad. He agreed with this ijtihad. Is that clear? Tayyib. Another one. Another situation, كذلك اجتهاد الصحابي عمار بن ياسر حين بعثه الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم في حاجة فأجنب فلم يجد الماء. So Ammar ibn Yasir, he prayed, or rather he was in a state of sexual impurity. And it was time for the salat and he did not have any water. So he laid down in the dirt and he rolled around in the dirt. He rolled around in the dirt. And so the Prophet, he made ijtihad, right? His rolling around the dirt was him making ijtihad. And so the Prophet says, إِمَّا كَانَ يَكْفِيكَ تَصْنَعُ هَكَذَا. And so the Prophet he told him, all you had to do was put your hands together, hit the dirt, rub your hand, the right hand over the left, and wipe your face, and that would have been sufficient. The next question. These ijtihad that came from the Sahaba, are they considered from the origin of tashri'ah? Meaning, do we use those to say, okay, this was part of establishing the Sharia? La. Not at all. Not at all. Right. So then, a quick rehash. The time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were two primary sources for legislation in Islam. What were they? The Quran and the Sunnah. As it relates to the Quran, it says, هو كلام الله المبين المنزل على قلب سيد المرسلين بلسان عربي مبين. That the Quran was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ in Arabic, in no other language but Arabic. وقد اتخذ رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كتاب للوحي. The Prophet ﷺ, he had kutab. Kutab are writers. He had writers of the revelation. So we're going to mention some of the names of the writers of the revelation. I think this is important. From the names of the companions who wrote the revelation, Abi Bakr, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Umar ibn Khattab, Uthman ibn Affan, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Zayd ibn Thabit, معاوية ibn Abi Sufyan, Ubay ibn Ka'b, Khalid ibn al-Walid, والثابت بن قيس فما تنزل عليه آية من كتاب الله إلا يأمر كتابه بكتابتها. There is not an ayah that came down to the Prophet ﷺ except that he commanded the kutab, the writers, to write it down. There wasn't a verse that came down except that he commanded the writers to write it down. فيقول دعوها في موضع كذا من سورة كذا فاجتمع في كتاب الله حوله في الصدور وكتابته في الألواح. So the Quran was preserved. The Quran was preserved and it was compiled by the companions. However, it wasn't written all in one place when the Quran was revealed. Rather, وَكَانُوا يَكْتَبُونَ الْقُرْآنَ فِي الْلُخَافِ وَهِيَ صَفَاحِحِ الْحِجَارَةِ. They were writing on rocks. They would write verses and ayat on rocks, tree trunks, roots, anything that they can use, bones of animals, anything they could use that would write the verses of Allah on it, and that's what they would use to preserve it. And it said that the Quran فَلَمْ تَكُنْ مُجْتَمِعَةٌ فِي مُصْحَفٍ وَاحِدٍ بَلْ قَدْ يَكُونْ عِنْدَ هَذَا مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا لَيْسَ عِنْدَ الْآخَرِ. And you will find from the companions that some of them will have verses written down where others didn't have them written down. Does that make sense? So some companions will have certain verses in ayat and other companions will have others and so on and so forth. Right? And then later on the Quran was compiled. And we could probably cover that, or maybe the Sayyid can cover that in Ulum al-Quran, the sciences of the Quran. Okay? Inshallah. And then when you study that science, you'll figure out how the Quran was compiled, who compiled it, etc., etc. طيب. فقبض رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم والقرآن كله محفوظ في الصدور. When the Prophet ﷺ, when he passed away, all of the Quran was preserved, meaning preserved his sudur, in the breasts of men and women during that time. They had the Quran memorized. Maktub fi suhuf ala nahr ma sabaq, and it was written the way that it was written up until it was compiled into one book. The next aspect of tashri', and this will be the last thing we'll cover before we get to the asr, or the time period of the Sahaba, the sunnah. What does the word sunnah mean? If someone says, because I hear that a lot here in this city, somebody's not on the sunnah. Everyone ever heard that before? You laugh, I'm serious. You ever hear someone say, oh, he's not on the sunnah?
Yeah, that's what that's funny. It's real.
True. Anyone who ever says such and such is not on the sunnah, you should ask that person, which sunnah exactly? Which sunnah? Fi'liya, qawliya, akhlaq, khalqiyya, khuluqiyya, like which one? And you're gonna hear something called crickets. You know, crickets chirping, like, what? What is he talking about? Ah, that's a bit, you made that up too. Alright? But what sunnah? When people say, listen, it's a grave error. It's a grave error for a Muslim to look at another Muslim and say he doesn't follow the sunnah. Give me one human being that you know follows every single sunnah of Islam. Sunnah. This here, the sunnah that will consider a person to be from Ahlul Sunnah or Ahlul Bid'ah, are those the sunnah that we're talking about? And if we look closely at it, most of the brothers that are saying that don't even know what those sunnah are either. They don't even know what those sunnahs are either. Yes, there are certain sunnah that if you leave them off, could take a person outside of the folds of Ahlul Sunnah. But I guarantee the brothers and sisters that are saying that do not know that answer. I guarantee you. Maybe one or few, but most of them don't. They're just, as the Arabs would say, Balballah. You know what Balballah is? Sheikh Saeed. It's Balballah, huh? What is it? Parrots. You know how parrots go? No, a parrot. You know what a parrot does? You know what a parrot does? They just repeat everything they hear? That's what parrots do. That's most of us. The lesson. So then, what is a sunnah? What is a sunnah? Huh?
statements of the Prophet, their proofs of the Prophet, their legislation of the Prophet.
How many aspects of the Sunnah is there? It's five. Five aspects of the Sunnah. Does anyone know what they are? You know all five? Fuck.
Statements of the Prophet, some actions of the Prophet, some allowances of the Prophet.
Allowances? You mean like what he agreed, what he didn't oppose?
What he did oppose.
Okay.
What his presidency allowed.
Mm-hmm.
The Sunnah of his creation, his creation, as well as his
You got it, man. Just the last one.
one more, not character.
Yeah, it's character. It's mannerisms. I said it. So the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is predicated off of five things, right? The first one is وَمِنَ الْقَوْلِ, a statement, of al-fi'l, actions, of taqreer. Taqreer means something that happened around him and he didn't say anything about it. So let's say, for example, two companions, they came up with an ijtihad. And it happened in front of him, or he did something in front of him and he didn't say anything about it. This is considered sunnah taqreer. Sunnah taqreer. The next one, or sifat khilqiyya, meaning how he is created, meaning the way he looked. It's also considered sunnah. How he looked and his khuluqiyya, and his mannerisms. How he conducted himself, his manner, his character, etc. This is also considered from sunnah. When we say to a person, Fulan or Fulana, they're not on the sunnah, what sunnah are we talking about? And is it a sunnah that will take a person outside of the realm of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah? You're going to hear crickets. Crickets.
Because it's not according to the Sunnah, it's according to...
No, it's according to people's desires, I think. Let's just call it a spade. It's according to how people feel. It's not based on... Now, granted, some people, maybe, right? They may leave off aspects of the sunnah that are required, right? But who really knows that, though? Who? Who can sit here and tell somebody, this person is not on the sunnah? What sunnah are they not on properly? What sunnah exactly? Crickets. It's a crime. This is a problem. And this is why we're having classes like this, so that people can understand this is Islam. Islam has rules and regulations. It's not how you feel. It's not because he doesn't wear thobe like you, because she doesn't wear all black like you, because she doesn't have niqab on like you, because she doesn't look like this, because he doesn't look like you. Huh? It doesn't mean the person is not on the sunnah. Like, so the next one. وَلَمْ يَتَّخِذَ النَّبِيُّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ كُتَّابًا السُّنَّةِ. So, the Prophet ﷺ, he did not take people to write down the sunnah. He did not have people writing down the sunnah. بَلْ وَرَدَ عَنْهُ حَثَّ أُمَّتُهُ عَلَى حِفْظِهَا فِي الصُّدُورِ مَعَ وَعِيهَا. So the Prophet ﷺ, during that time, he did not have his companions writing down the sunnah. Rather, he told them to memorize it. Even to the point where he says, بَلَّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Narrate on me even if it's one ayah. وَلِبْنِ حِبَّانٍ مِنْ حَدِيثِ ابْنِ مَسْعُودٍ قَالَ سَمِعْتُ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. He said, نَضَّرَ اللَّهُ عَمْرًا سَمِعَ مِنَّا حَدِيثًا فَبَلَّغَهُ كَمَا سَمِعَهُ فَرُبَّ مُبَلَّغٍ أَوْعَى مِنَ السَّامِعِ. And this hadith mentions about the reward of the one who narrates or sends forth or passes on a narration of the Prophet ﷺ. And he said, perhaps the one who is listening to the narration will benefit more from the one who is actually telling you. For example, if a person is telling you a hadith, you may benefit more from the one that's telling you the hadith. The listener may benefit more from the one who is saying the hadith. وَلِذَلِكَ كَانَ الصَّحَابَةُ يَتَسَابَقُونَ إِلَى حِفْظِهَا وَتَبْلِيغِهَا كَمَا سَمِعُوهَا. The companions, they will race to memorize the hadith and inform the others of the hadith. طيب. There was a time when the Prophet ﷺ did not allow his companions to write down hadith. However, towards the end, before the death of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, the companions began to write hadith. Who from the companions are the ones who are known to have the most hadith with them? Abu Huraira. Ahsan. You want to say Abu Huraira?
No.
Oh, okay. Abu Huraira. Alright, so with that, we're going to close out, inshallah. Are there any questions? Ask the questions. Now, fadl.
Did you say that in the matter of ijtihad, if it happened during the time of the Messenger of Allah sallam, such as the case with Abdullah ibn Amr al-As, that's not part of the tashri'ah?
Meaning that the Sahabi act itself is not a part of tashri'ah. The tashri'ah only came from the Quran and the Sunnah. So the tashri'ah could have been the Prophet ﷺ approving of his action. That would have been tashri'ah. So for example, tashri'ah means putting laws into effect, establishing the law. A companion, if they did an action during that time, that action that they did alone is not considered the tashri'ah. However, how the Messenger of Allah ﷺ dealt with it would have been considered tashri'ah. Because we spoke about sunnah. What is sunnah?
That's what I was going to ask.
So I'm telling you, sunnah as it relates to here, we mentioned sunnah statement, actions, and taqreer. Taqreer is the fact that it happened and the Prophet ﷺ affirmed that action, that his affirmation would have been considered what? Part of tashri'ah, but not the act itself. Does that make sense?
The action is the confirmation.
The confirmation is the tashri'ah.
Not the action.
Not the action that we
So the action doesn't become a law?
It could, but what I'm telling you is that the action or the taqreer of the Prophet ﷺ, that is the law.
Say no more, I got it.
Right? We're talking about the law itself. The taqreer is the law. So anytime the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, if they did something in his presence and he didn't say anything, then his not saying something is the law on that particular issue.
I got it.
Well, I'll give you another example. The companion, Ammar ibn Yasir. Ammar ibn Yasir, he was in a state of sexual impurity. So he rolled around on the ground, right? So when the Prophet ﷺ heard about it, he said, all you had to do was hit your hands to the ground, wipe your right hand over the left with no water, and then wipe your face. This here became part of the tashri'ah, what the Prophet ﷺ said.
Definitely.
Right, now, the next one. What is the punishment for drinking khamr? Since we don't live here in an Islamic society, there's no need mentioning it. In reference to legalized sin? In reference to legalized sin, if someone thinks to say, I am Salafi, is enough to save them from Allah's punishment, and this is correct? No. A person may fornicate, but because they proclaim their Salafiyya, they feel they are better than the one. This is batil. This is falsehood, total falsehood, and this is what people have got living here in Philadelphia. This is the epitome of why people need to study Islam. There's a statement that the Arabs have, is كل من يدعي ليلى وليلى لا تدعيه كما قال. Everyone claims that they were with Layla, but Layla doesn't claim any of them. Everyone claims to follow the Sunnah, but the Sunnah itself will prove it. The act of proof is always in the pudding. You live in a city, in a place where everyone screams that they're Salafi, they're on the Sunnah. Who does that? We lived amongst the ulama for 10 years. I don't ever remember ulama saying that they're on the Sunnah. Never. Yeah, shit. You remember people saying that? No, never. Huh? Not like this. Never. Never. I don't hear people don't walk around talking like that. It's only here. And this is this here, this is my opinion. A person that runs around and say they're Salafi, but that means, what I understand from this is, you don't have to study Islam. It's sufficient to just say yourself. I remember when I first came back to America, people were talking about these innovators. I said, well, Dad, I'd have been better off staying here. I'd have been Salafi if I didn't study Islam. Right? Now that you go learn something about, not everything you learn a little bit about Islam, now you're innovating. Well, Dad, I'd have been better off not going nowhere. I'd have stayed here. That's the problem. That's the problem. The problem is, and you find the only people talk like this is people that haven't studied. No, I don't know any student of knowledge that really studied Islam talks like this. And the ones that really studied Islam that do talk like this, something happened to them along the way. May Allah right their ship and bring them back to what's correct. I mean, yeah.
You was talking about how, as a regular day-to-day Muslim, you don't have the authority to implement like a punishment. No, not necessarily.
So,
like
the day-to-day Muslim, you do not have the authority to implement any type of punishment on anyone.
All right. So what's the ruling if that does happen?
The ruling, okay, so let's say, for example, a Muslim drinks alcohol. You're in the land of the non-Muslims. Even if you're in the land of the Muslims, you don't tell the government about, like, hey, I drunk alcohol, like, punish me, right? Hear me out. Here, as the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned a lot of times, a person should cover their sins. If you commit sins, cover your sins. Don't tell people about your sins and make tawbah.
No, I meant like in the sense of like, say somebody steal from my store or something, and I know who did it, and I go cut his hand.
Nah, haram.
That's what
If someone steals, if someone steals from your store, call the police. No, because you gotta understand. If everyone took his mentality, let's say, for example, every Muslim says, you know what, I'm gonna take the law into my own hands. This is how you get groups like ISIS and all these other extremists, right? It leads to that, right? Every Tom, Dick, and Harry can't take the law in their own, it will be chaos. You live in a society that has rules. If someone steals, call the police. If someone harms someone, this is the purpose, it's structured, right? Okay, so you said, well, it's not an Islamic structure. Okay, well, you live here. It's where you live. You gotta, in general, you gotta respect the laws of the land where you live, right? There are rules in place for a reason, okay? Now, even in the land of the Muslims, if you have Islamic law set up, the crimes and punishment aspect, you still can't implement it on your own. You still gotta go to the authorities. If you live in the land of the Muslims, for example, someone steals from your store, just the mere fact that someone stole something, it doesn't mean that they get a punishment. It has to be a certain amount, right? So it's more detailed. It has to reach a certain threshold. There are also other conditions in place that have to be met before any type of punishment like that can be carried out, even in the land of the Muslims. A brother mentioned to me before, they said that some people, a person fornicates, whatever, they have a group of Muslims that lash them, take them in the basement and give them some lashes. Like, where's this from? You can't do that. But you can't do that though. You don't have the authority to do something like that. That's assault. You lash somebody back, okay, well, this is why you lash my house Sunday. What Sunday is that out here? You don't have the authority to do that. You can't do that. You cannot do that. You don't have the right. You don't have the right to transgress anyone's personal space to do anything like that. You don't have the right. That's like saying in the land of the Muslims, you know he fornicated, everyone knows he fornicated, so we want to lock him in a room. That means everybody's getting it. If this is in the land of the Muslims, everybody's going to get it. The one that fornicated, the one that tried to do it on them, they're going to get it too. You don't have the right to do that, right? Now, what's the next question?
It's really, I want you to clarify something else. When you talk about the types of sunnah, sometimes when you read the hadith, you'll see some of the things that the Muslims did that's not for everybody, such as continuous fasting. What type of sunnah would that be? so that we don't get confused that a person may read something and then think they can do that, not knowing it was specifically for the Muslim.
So the question you're asking is studied in detail in a science called usul fiqh. In usul fiqh, there's a whole section dealing with sunnah. What sunnah is specific for the Prophet ﷺ, and what sunnah is for everyone, and how do you judge between sunnah? How do you know what is obligatory upon us, what is recommended for us, and what is specific for him, ﷺ? There's a whole science behind it, and it's not a black and white answer. I'm sorry. Maybe, inshallah, we'll cover, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we'll go through some books of usul fiqh. And then there's a whole section on sunnah. It's more than I can give you in 30 seconds. All right, now.
Yeah. This question is pretty, down levels to it, so just bear with me.
Right.
There's levels to the question, complex. So, in these classes, we've heard, Saeed concerning the study and salary. Most of the scholars' base foundation is Hanbali.
Most of the scholars' base foundation is Hanbali. Where? In Saudi? Are you asking me? So most of the scholars that we studied with, they studied Hanbali fiqh. Most of them.
So the next,
If not all of them.
if not all of them. So building from that question concerning the nikah. The question is, if some of the scholars that rule it obligatory or make
Oh, what obligatory?
the
Nikah?
nikah,
Oh, the niqab.
the nikah,
Oh, okay.
right? There's other Hanbali scholars that may not take that same position.
That is wajib?
Right.
Sure. So the issue of niqab is an issue that's, there's a lot of research on the niqab. Majority of the ulama from all the madhahib of fiqh, they hold that the niqab, this is the majority of the salaf we're talking about. Majority of the salaf, they hold the position that the niqab is mustahab, not wajib. That the niqab is mustahab, not wajib. This is the majority position of the salaf as it relates to the niqab. However, there are instances and circumstances where some ulama consider it to be wajib in certain cases, in other cases they don't. It's a complex issue, it's not black and white. As it relates to the scholars of the Hanabila, then they fall in with the Jamhur, meaning most of the salaf from them consider it to be recommended, not obligatory.
So the next
But the modern day, so you're talking about the modern day scholars.
modern day Hanbali.
So the modern day Hanbali scholars like in Saudi Arabia, for example, where most of them hold that is wajib, tell you, a lot of things, and Allah knows best. It could be because most of the modern day scholars of the Hanabila in Saudi Arabia, they consider it to be wajib, right? And they may consider it for several reasons. One of the reasons is we have something in usul fiqh called sadd al-dhari'ah, or sadd al-dhara'i, which means that you can give a legislative ruling on something. If it leads to something, and the thing that leads to it could be haram, so therefore they could have called it haram based on that. They have other cultural norms. So for example, we covered in another class, al-'ada muhakkama, meaning the customary practice of the people takes precedence, right? So in that case, as long as there's nothing opposed to it, perhaps in their culture, meaning in Saudi Arabian culture, they say, okay, we're going to deem it to be impermissible based on the effects that it can have in their society. For example, there are a lot of different aspects to it. It's not like a cookie cutter answer, but customarily speaking, that's what they are accustomed to. Shar'an, legislatively, it's within their right to give that verdict. There are other scholars, like for example, Sheikh Al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala. I remember we were talking with Sheikh Wasiullah Abbas one day. And he was also, obviously, he was studying with Sheikh Al-Albani. So he told Sheikh Al-Albani, he said, listen, he said, when you were in Syria or Syria, your family don't wear the niqab, because he didn't deem it to be wajib. He said, but when you come here to the Mamlaka, when you come here to Saudi Arabia, you make sure your family has niqab, even though you say it's not wajib. So Sheikh Al-Albani replied, as the Sheikh Wasiullah, he told us, he said that, Sheikh Al-Albani said, when you're in a place, you do as the people do. When you're in the place, you do as the people do. And that was Sheikh Al-Albani, rahimahullah, that was his response. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Right. Any other questions? No, okay.
Ali, I have a book at home, the Wide Fiqhiyya book, the Man Nasir Sadi. Is that book sufficient for like as an introduction to principles of usul fiqh in the Hanbali fiqh, or could you give another title? So I can jot down introduction to usul fiqh specific to Hanbali fiqh, specific to Hanbali school.
So,
Qawaid al-Fiqh be sufficient?
so Qawaid Fiqhiyya is not usul fiqh. For two different things. Qawaid Fiqhiyya are principles that are used to give legislative verdicts, legislative rulings. Usul fiqh is the tools that come before you get to the principles. Right? So, as it relates to usul fiqh, then most of Imam Ahmad's usul fiqh came from Imam al-Shafi'i. Came from who? Imam al-Shafi'i. So, the first beginner book of usul that I would recommend is a book that probably we all studied, was Al-Waraqat. Al-Waraqat lil-Imam al-Juwayni. Imam al-Juwayni. Al-Waraqat is a small book on usul of Imam al-Shafi'i. After you get past that, for the school of Imam Ahmad, maybe you'll be able to go into Rawdat al-Nadhr. Rawdat al-Nadhr, Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, rahimahullah ta'ala. Rawdat al-Nadhr, they have many different prints. There's also a book, Usul al-Hanabiq al-Bulbul, Sahih, al-Bulbul. Al-Usul,
Like the bird?
it's a small book for Usul. Hanabila. I think that's what it is. I think that's what it's called, Bulbul. I think so.
That's why.
I think that's the name of it. But essentially, for a beginner book of Usul fiqh, being as though the Usul al-Hanabila, it derives from the Usul of Imam al-Shafi'i. I would recommend going studying Shafi'i Usul first, if you can. That's what we did. In the university, we actually didn't, in our curriculum, in our program, I didn't even study Usul al-Hanabila to Imam Ahmad. We studied that outside of the university. We didn't even study that in the university. In the university, we studied Usul Imam al-Shafi'i. We studied Usul Imam al-Shafi'i. And that's because this Usul Imam al-Shafi'i is considered the foundational of Usul fiqh. No.
What are the differences, some of the differences, if you have time, between, if you have time?
Go ahead, Sheikh.
If you have time.
No, I owe some time. I wasn't here for a couple of weeks.
Being that Imam Ahmad was a student of Imam Shafi'i,
No.
what are some of their differences to the fact that it has to be at school?
So we'll talk about that. So he said, what's the differences between Imam Ahmad and Imam Shafi'i? We're going to talk about that as we go on in this class that we're doing. We're going to get to them. We'll talk about each one of the Imam Arba, who they were, who their students were, and what is their usul. We're going to talk about that. Zubd al-Kalam, they differ, just in general, they differ after the first four. The first four, Quran, Sunnah, Ijma, and Qiyas. So I'll give you an example. Say an issue comes up in Islam, any type of issue. What's the permissibility of having a rug on the table, for example, right? So the ulama, they're going to say, okay, let's look in the Quran. Do we find anything in the Quran saying halal, saying yay or nay, right? They don't find anything in the Quran. They look in the Sunnah. Do you find anything in the Sunnah No. So now we're going to go with Imam al-Shafi'i. Imam al-Shafi'i going to say, do we find anything in Ijma'? No. Do we find anything in Qiyas? No. Cool. Imam Ahmed is going to go to Quran, Sunnah, and then he's going to go to Ijma', and then after Ijma', he's going to go, let me see if I got a fatwa from one of the companions. If Imam Ahmed finds a fatwa from one of the companions, he's going to take that over Qiyas. You understand? So it's all about layers. So Imam Ahmed is going to take a statement of a companion first. Imam al-Shafi'i is going to take Qiyas over anything else. So it's different. So here Imam Ahmed is the fourth layer, or the third layer, and Imam Shafi'i, Qiyas is going to be after that. It's going to be like the fifth or sixth layer, if that makes sense. So in essence, there are different steps to how you arrive to a ruling. You're going to go through steps. Imam al-Shafi'i, there's 4 steps before you arrive at a ruling. Imam Ahmed, maybe it's 3 steps before you get there. Does that make sense? And as we get, listen, it may not make sense now, but as we continue in the class, inshallah, it'll become clear. Now, I'm following.
Is this a true statement, I'm asking, that how they view Ishmael was different?
What now?
Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam Ahmed.
Right.
As far as how he approached Ishmael. Imam Ahmed, Ishmael was the Sahaba. Maybe Imam al-Shafi'i, Ishmael was more broader than just the Sahaba.
Wallahi, man. I don't know. Sayyid Dikshay? Huh? I don't know. He said the Imam al-Shafi'i considered Ijma' just to be the Sahaba, and the Imam Ahmed considered to be Osa, like wider than that. I don't recall. Or flip-flop. I don't recall. I would have to research that. I don't know. Off the top, I don't know. Any other questions, inshallah? Can I spell it? Bulbul. I think it's al-Bulb. I think it's called al-Bulbul. Bulbul. I don't know. Oh, khilaf ma'na ijma'. Yeah, difference of opinion in the meaning of ijma'. So what was Imam Ahmed's definition of ijma'? Did it differ from Imam? Who taught you ijma'? What was his name? What was the sheikh name? La. Ahmed, Sheikh Yamani. Thought you should answer that question. Benefit us. I don't remember. You studied it with one of the best people to study ijma' with. It's khilaf? Right. He says it's difference of opinion. When it comes to ijma', I don't know anybody that studied it better than him. I'm talking about from among us. Listen, I didn't study ijma' when you did. I don't recall. He asked a question, I don't have the answer to. Right. Any other questions? Any other questions? خلاص. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How do you stop this? Are you sure you want to stop the screen?
What is that? I'm ready to stop it. Okay.
Question.